number one, baby! Yeah! I like my hair, got a new hairstyle. Yeah, we're used to doing that all the time with the Pirates. They're always winners, and the Steelers are always winners, and the Penguins are always winners. Okay, so I'm lying. The Pirates haven't won since 1979, and the Steelers, they just suffered the biggest loss ever. I mean, come on, man. But being sports fans means that we make a commitment to our team, and we try the best to rise with them when they're good, and sometimes we cry with them when they lose. But life goes on, and you got to just switch from one sport to the next. So I think everybody should have one of these in their home. It's called the Wait Till Next Year box. And the reason why I have that is that you simply take off your pirate hat, put away your pirate mask, hoping that it won't need this when the season starts again. Put away your pirate jersey, real nice, because you don't want to have to iron it when you take it back out. I have a couple Steeler things that I use. These glasses, everybody thinks they're pretty funny, but really, these glasses really help me a lot on Sunday night to cover up my dark circles and my tears into Monday morning. But we'll put those away as well. A Steeler mask. And if we're wearing this next Steelers season, I hope it's only because it's really cold out. And then I put away my favorite jersey until next season. All I can say is, whoops, where in the world were you hiking that ball on Sunday? But I'll forget all about it next year, and I'll wear it again. So I close the box, put those losses away, and get out my Gensel jersey, because you know why? Hockey season's starting, and you know what that means? It is the run for the cup. See how easy it is to transition from one loss to another hope and another season, and glory is always around the corner. But unfortunately, in real life, it's not that easy. We get over our sports losses. But what about losses that are real to us? Some losses that we suffered, especially in this past year of 2020. After this commercial, I want to share with you what loss really means in relationship to Big Ben's loss. What's he going to do next year? And our loss. And how does God answer us in those times of our grief? So let's pause right now and have a word from our sponsor. Welcome back to OSM Operation Safe Mode. As we know, on Sunday the Steelers suffered probably the greatest loss in their franchise history. It always seems to be overwhelming when we don't see it coming, when we least expect it. The picture of Ben here sitting all by himself on the bench, I thought it spoke thousands and thousands of words, thinking and imagining what was Ben wondering at that time. It is what loss brings us to examine within ourselves. If I was to give you a definition of the word loss, it would be emptiness and pain, a sense of being diminished or even depleted. Loss is when we experience failure, and then in that failure we have overwhelming disappointment. Loss means we didn't gain what we thought we were going to have for much longer, but now we have less than when the day started. That definition, those emotions, really reflect on what happens when one enters into despair. That there is nothing to look forward to. What will be the events of life that could possibly overcome this experience? When we look at the picture of Ben and his disappointment, he definitely was feeling that emptiness and that pain. He just wanted to sit for a few moments by himself. He knew as soon as he got up, he would have to deal with it. He would have to begin to answer questions he didn't have the answers to. I read on Sunday evening that Ben said his first conversation after this loss will be between me and God. And I will decide what is important and what will come next after this. Of course, there's another season. Maybe one more for Ben, maybe not. But we learned that sports and losses and wins are very time-centered. They come and they go. But there's other loss that is much more dramatic, much more tragic to us. A loss of a loved one, a loss of jobs, a loss of our freedom through COVID, a loss of being a companion to another or even having human touch, and that is called loneliness. And I think that this kind of despair that comes into our lives has to be overwhelmed with the cure. Yes, there is a cure for the loss in our lives. And the cure is called hope and consolation. So how do we gain hope and consolation? When we try to console someone, we usually use those words, oh, it will be better soon. You will get over this. We always know that those words fall so short from the mark, but we don't know what else to say. But true consolation isn't empty accolades that we try to give in sympathy. Consolation is a fact of what is to come, not because we're waiting for it to come, but because it's being revealed to us when we put aside the things that we thought our whole life was about. Consolation comes in God restoring these things to us, and that's what hope is. I want to speak to you just a little bit about the story of the road to Emmaus. We know that we read it the week after Easter season begins, and it's a story in John's Gospel that reminds us I want to share with you the story of the road to Emmaus. It is a resurrection story. It's when Jesus comes and meets some of his disciples, not his apostles, but his disciples who are walking away from Jerusalem in great sorrow, great pain, great emptiness, and disappointment. They felt that they had failed somehow because what they expected to see to happen in that great city at the Passover did not take place. But yet a great tragedy. Their friend, their teacher, the one who they thought was their Messiah, had died. Not only died, but was put to death on the cross. Let me read just a short part of the story to put it in context for us. Now that very day, two of them were going to a village 7 miles from Jerusalem called Emmaus. And they were conversing about all the things that had occurred. They were talking about how Jesus was given up by Judas, how he was taken at night and had a trial before the Sanhedrin, how he was imprisoned and then went before Pilate to his death after a brutal scourging and crowning of thorns. And they still hoped that somehow when these events were happening, that Jesus would tend to himself like he tended to so many in their suffering. But he was put to death and he was laid in the tomb. So while they're having this conversation, here's what happens next. And it happened while they were conversing and debating. Jesus himself drew near and walked with them. But their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. This is what despair does to us. This is what a loss in desperation and loneliness overwhelms us not to be able to see with those eyes of faith in that safe mode as we've been trying to practice in the past year. They could not see Jesus because he was resurrected. He was new. His life represented something even more than he shared with them in his earthly journey. So Jesus walks up to them and he asks them, "What are you discussing while you're walking along?" And they stopped and looked downcast at him. And they said to him, "Are you the only one in all of Jerusalem who did not know of the events that took place?" And they began to tell Jesus all about the events. But what's wonderful about this is that as they tell their sad story, as they speak about their loss, Jesus walks with them away from the believing community because he understands that sometimes we just need to fold our arms. Sometimes we need just to be upset. Sometimes we need to just put down our head and cry. Sometimes we don't want the answers yet because we hurt so much. And as they explained to Jesus that the thing that got them so upset was that some of the women who were part of their group had come and said that he was no longer in the tomb and that he had risen from the dead. They didn't believe in the resurrection. Or perhaps maybe it was just too much for them to think that what they wanted with Jesus was taken away so that they could have something far greater. So Jesus begins to tell them everything that the sacred scriptures said about him. And as he spoke to them, he relayed to them that how the one who was to come had to offer himself as sacrifice, how he would die, but yet he would rise and fulfill the promise of the kingdom in that new world. When they got to Emmaus, which was the place for which the men were going, Jesus acted as if he was going to go further. And they said to him, "Please, will you not stay with us for a while?" And of course, it was then in the breaking of the bread that they recognized that it was Jesus. And when he disappeared, they said, "Were not our hearts burning within us as he taught us on the way?" So when we suffer great losses, not so much in sporting events because there's always another day. My father would always say, "You know why, Johnny, I love baseball?" "Why is that, Dad?" "Because they're playing again tomorrow." But in serious and traumatic loss, such as loved ones, or even our sense of purpose, or in our loneliness, we need to be able to allow Christ to walk with us. We don't always have to walk under the weight of the cross with him, but we can walk with him as we learn that he is the one who is risen. He will explain to us, and our hearts will burn with the truth of God's love for us. So let us remember always that in the loss of our own death to self, or death to the life for which we know, Jesus always raises it up to a new life in the resurrection. And that is truly how hope is the cure over despair. And that is truly how we know that consolation is something not far away. It's just something that we need to uncover and have revealed to us in our loss. So know this. I know many of you are suffering in fear of losing someone because of COVID. I know some of you are suffering because you have lost loved ones. I know that you're suffering not being able to see your families and the loneliness as well. So please remember that it is always in these things for which we hope. For he will overtake our disappointment. He fills us in our emptiness with his love. When we feel diminished and pleaded, he'll carry us. He'll make us new. Why? Because in the resurrection, after this life, he makes all things new in his image and likeness. So I hope our message today kind of helps us put all things in perspective. I know that Ben Roethlisberger is a man of faith. I know that he rolled his eyes several times during the game, and I can only imagine him saying, when I score a touchdown, I point to you in thanksgiving. How do I thank you for these things? How can I thank you when things are going wrong? And I think what Ben comes to realize is that these are passing things, and the pain that we suffer in them has nothing to do with the promise of eternal life, and it will pale in comparison. I think Big Ben, because of his faith, because of the love of his family, he will, when the time is right, be able to say, as Chuck Noll said, he will get on with his works, his life's work, and that is proclaiming and sharing the gospel message and awaiting the kingdom of heaven. So let's wait till next year and see what happens. Perhaps the Pens will bring us a cup, but if not, our Lord Jesus will always walk with us, explain to us our lives in the hope of the resurrection. So remember, it is in times like these that saints are forged. So let us continue to strive to become saints. Even through our despair, even in our sorrows, we will always have hope and consolation.